Hello, and welcome to another episode of Page Burners. We are working our way through the Malazan books by Stephen Erikson and Ian Esselmont. We're reading them in publication order. We're currently on Memories of Ice, which is the third book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erikson. The book after this will be Blood Follows, I think. So we'll be veering off of Malazan Book of the Fallen stuff, starting from the next book, I think. And we read our way through about 100 pages every week. I'm using the Kindle edition to do that calculation, but we're finding sometimes that the chapters are too many. So, so today's discussion is going to be chapters 3 and 4, and next week we'll do chapters 5 and 6. So if you have been following along with us and are using the schedule that I've posted on the Patreon forum, please keep tracking that for updates. We might change our minds about how much to read each week as we go. Yeah, that's about it. With me, of course, we have the usual group of friends. Oh, before I do that, I forget to do this every time. What am I most excited to talk about? I want to talk about Paran's perception of Tavor and what happened to Felicin. That's my topic for today. Over to you, Carl.
Yeah, I'm Carl. I am most excited to talk about. It's got to be Ganos, right? And everything that he is struggling with internally and externally, but mostly internally. And I'll pass it off to Steve, is on my left. So, Steve.
I'm Steve from Page Chewing, and I think this would the obvious answer. I think is the relationship between the houses and the decks, and how it's all seemingly connected, which I'm not 100%, yet on. But I want to talk about Hairlock, and I'm not convinced he's dead. I don't believe it. He is alive. Hairlock lives.
Yes.
And Shannon.
We have to resurrect the Hairlock topic, just like Hairlock has been resurrected.
And in the third book, he rose again.
And Shannon.
Hey, my name's Shannon, and I am most interested to talk about the same thing Steve just talked about, the houses, the holds, because I think the lore that Steve and Esselmont both built into this series is kind of the stuff that I really enjoy, sometimes even the most. But to be different, I'll also go ahead and say, we learn a little bit about the Panyin Domain that's coming later in the book, and there's some rumors about the tennis scoury and stuff that I thought were kind of interesting.
Choice.
Nice. I think chapter 3, if I recall correctly, starts in the Rivi camp. We meet Silver Fox, who is Statusale Reborn. Remind me, is this the first time we meet her, apart from like knowing that she exists? So we meet her and a very tortured mother who's called Maib. That's how I've been saying her name. Does anyone have a different pronunciation?
Maybe.
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 Or Mabe.
Maybe, is that what you call her? Or are you saying maybe?
Sometimes I call her Maybe. It looks kind of like that.
Makes sense.
To those listening, it's MHYBE.
I try to pronounce the H's, so I go Maib, but it's too difficult to keep saying. Anyway, because there are Hindi words that have the bh sound with that. Yeah. Anyway, Indian languages have that sound, but not with an M preceding it. That's just weird. Where was I going with this? Yeah.
So we meet Maybe or Mabe, and we find out she was the young girl that Kruppa met way back in Gardens of the Moon with Fran Cole and Karul. When they were in that dream.
That's right.
I do think we met Silver Fox very briefly, like right near the end of Gardens of the Moon. I think she was like a little toddler traveling around with the Rivi, but we didn't really know what her deal was. I mean, we knew Tattersail was reborn, but other than that, We definitely didn't know anything about Night Chill, which
Mhm.
is the other sort of, in many ways, the more significant reveal, who is, if I forget if we talked about this last week or not, but is Sister of Cold Nights
Mhm.
from the prologue, the elder goddess who cursed Kalor and was cursed in turn to be betrayed and ripped apart. And now these two personalities are warring inside Silver Fox as she rapidly ages, but is at present a little girl, or her body is a little girl's body. I something that I think Erikson does really well with this whole dynamic is that you're never quite sure what her deal is, or at least at this point, like, you don't know what is motivating her, what her personality really is. Like, she's very mysterious. She's an enigmatic little girl, and I think that's something that's potentially really hard to pull off. But Erikson nails it. One of our I forget who, one of our friends in the forum was commenting about how he didn't like Silver Fox yet, although he really liked Tattersail and Gardens, and like, I think that's intentional. Like, she's kind of a little creepy, or if not creepy, at least like, you're not supposed to know how to feel about her. I feel like you're not supposed to know what she's going to do next. She's an X factor here, and I think she works really well in that regard. Like, I think if you were to sort of name, like, well, okay, who's the wild card in the group, and I feel like it would be very easy to name Kalor, as he's the asshole. But I actually really feel like it's Silver Fox, because no one really knows what she's going to do next. And she has this weird connection with the Talani Mass. Like, she has not just Tattersail and Night Chill inside her, but also a Talani Mass spirit. So what's going with that? And we saw at the opening of the book that this is the year of the second gathering. So what does that mean? I think that's something that's really easy to skip over, but it is certainly something to keep in mind.
And the prologue was a gathering, right? So it was presumably the first gathering.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. And Silver Fox, I think the first time I read, there was a certain amount of disappointment in the Silver Fox character for me, because she wasn't like Tatase. We didn't pick up where we left off with her. But there are three things going on with her, so she's different enough that it all makes sense. Like, she has to be, right? Kind of like with the with Sorry, for instance, or the Candle Witch who possessed her. Like, they're all different, even though they were theoretically reincarnated from the dead. Paran came back pretty much as he was, but Tatase, this personality, is dealing with three different people inside of her, three different kinds of people. Like, we didn't mention the fact that she's a soul taker and an Emma's bone caster, right? So she's Night Chill too, and and she's got, I don't know if that makes her a third person or if that's the Silver Fox part of her. Plus she's also got Tattersail and Night Chill, kind of like in the who the Wiccans, when the mages are reborn, they said that they sort of piggyback on top of an existing soul when they are reborn. They aren't the only souls inhabiting the new body. So this feels a little bit like that. Like, there's three things going on with her, which means that she needs to be necessarily different. And there's, of course, the creepiness factor for like children growing up too fast. That's always there.
Not just that.
Yeah.
She's draining her birth
That too.
mother's life force to do it.
Mhm.
And I mean, talk about, like, I mean, even say this in the book, is like, just dramatizing the hard parts of motherhood, right? Where you're like literally having the life force sucked out of you by this
Yeah.
child. I mean, it's crazy. and just so tragic to read about this woman who's like was in her like
She's
20s.
young. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
in her
like early
20s.
20s,
If that.
Yeah.
and is now like an old woman. I
Yeah.
love that character. I love the first time I read it, I immediately was like, I've never seen a character like this
Mm.
in anything. And I think Erikson does such a wonderful job writing about her internal life. And she is so likable, but you sense her pain, right? And her anger. And it's just, I think she is just a phenomenal character. I love her. But I also, before we anyone else adds anything else to while I'm remembering this, I also wanted to touch on that, like, fantasy so often is like very much a, when fantasy is at its best, it's taking something very real we deal with, but that like doesn't have an external truth. So, where they're talking about like death, or love, and like embodying it, like making the metaphor real. And I feel that Silver Fox is in many ways sort of, I mean, sidebar, I'm sorry. Imagine pitching Silver Fox as a character to someone who doesn't know Malazan. It would be the most convoluted bullshit. Like, this is one of the hardest parts of like trying to like sell this series either to other readers, but even imagine it getting adapted. Like, imagine having to pitch Silver Fox to some Hollywood executive. Like, they would shit their pants. I can't even, let's not even go to the sorts of notes they would give. Anyway, but I think Silver Fox as a character.
What's hard to sell is like that creepy Twilight baby, right?
Exactly right. You got to have the weird CGI face. Yeah. And we probably do it with AI now. No, anyway, Silver Fox is, I think, turning the metaphor into the reality of how we all carry different people inside ourselves, right? We have all these different aspects of our personalities, many of which are contradictory or are warring against one another, and it's one of the, I think, eternally fascinating and frustrating parts of the human psyche, is that we are all so complex and have such, we have these internal wars, right? That most people don't see day to day. And, you'll hear sometimes about people being like, that's so unlike them. Like, that's just not in their character. If someone does something, often it's something horrible. And, you just don't know, right? What aspect of their personality that is. And that's kind of Silver Fox. And the tension is now like, which personality is going to win out? Is it going to be Nightchill, who's this creepy elder goddess who knows what she wants? Or is it going to be Tattersail, who's like pragmatic and kind and everyone likes her? Or is it going to be the freaking Talani mass person? And no one's even talking about the Talani mass person. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think with rebirth stories in general, I keep going back to Lord of Light, which I think I mentioned even when we were talking about Cloud Atlas, for instance, where the line that stood out to me: "Who I was then loved who you were then." Like the way we change as people over time, like the conversation between Tattersail and Paran, for instance. Once again, very disappointed in it the first time because I wanted them to pick up from where they left off. I know a lot of people here aren't like invested in the Tattersail Paran love story. I was, okay. I needed them to get back together. But I loved that they were practically strangers to each other in this. Like it was exactly how it felt like it should be, because they're both awkward, and it could be two people who broke up a long time ago and now are trying to find a way to talk to each other again, or just she's practically a different person and they're trying to figure out their dynamic. Well, she's not having that much trouble from what I can tell, but he is. and and yeah, all of that stuff was done brilliantly. I think if you start reading Silver Fox like I did, hoping for Tattersail, there will be disappointment, which there was for me. But thinking outside of that, I think she's just brilliantly construed as a character. And yeah.
Silver
How
Fox.
do you feel? Oh, Go ahead, Steve. I was going to ask you a question, but please say what you're going to say first.
No, I was just gonna really. She kind of reminds me of someone who's reborn, who's not really themselves anymore. So she's not really
Yeah.
Tattersail. Tattersail's there, but there's also other people there. And with all the memories, it kind of reminds me of the non-men. That she's not really. For
Mm.
those of you who haven't read the Second Apocalypse, the non-men are people who have lived for a long time without spoiling anything. So it kind of drives them. They're different people. They have different kind of ways of looking at the world because of all that they remember. So she kind of reminds me of that. That with all the all the memories that she's has at her disposal, she's not really a person anymore. In addition to all the other things that are going on with her.
That's what I was going to ask you. So this ties directly into what I was going to ask you, which is, Steve, you commented before about frustrations or feeling that someone who dies like could just like come back so easily, and sometimes that happens. And I was curious how this plays out for you in terms of, in some ways, this is a resurrection of Tattersail, although her personality seems to barely be there, if at all. And so I'm curious how you feel about it.
That's a good question. So we have glimpses, right? Of she seems to remember people if she liked people or disliked people or trusted someone, didn't trust someone. And Tattersail kind of struck me as someone who the story wasn't told yet. It didn't seem like it was complete. It didn't seem like an arc. So in that sense, I don't really mind that she's back, or at least in part back. But there are times when someone dies, I wish they'd kind of stay dead. I think it would increase. It would have kind of raise the stakes a little bit, and kind of give a little bit more kind of weight to death. But but she's not really her anymore. She's in there, but at least so far. I don't know if it'll change, but
So in short, it works for you.
yeah, because
Like you
because it
find,
isn't just a one-on-one. It's not just like oh hey, what's going on, guys? Like, do you have an Advil? You won't believe what I just went through. So it's a little different. So it's not exactly her. It's it's a piece of her, but it's still used in a different way.
Yeah, I feel like if you're going to do a resurrection, so often the best resurrections, or the ones that I like the most, are the ones where the people come back and they're not the same, and there are real consequences, and there's a real tragedy to that. And this is definitely an example of that. She is not who she was in every sense of the word, and it's very interesting that way. And there's a lot of tragedy, right, with her relationship with Ganos. I mean, I don't like it. I just feel like it's not earned, but it's weird because it's one of those that, like, on paper, I could be on board with. Like, I like them in my head, but then I like read their story in Gardens of the Moon, and I'm like, they knew each other for all of like 2 days, and they had sex once, and Ganos is acting like his life was changed forever. And I think there's a reading of it that, this is a very intentional kind of, this was a guy desperate for connection, and maybe specifically like feminine connection, coming from a family where, he was surrounded by, two sisters and his mother. And maybe he, was sort of seeking that out in a more adult, romantic fashion. But it just comes across as forced to me. Like it's like we're supposed to be feeling things that I just do not feel. And it is definitely one of the weak points of this book and this series as a whole for me, is Ganos and Tattersail, and Silver Fox in this case.
I think in cases like this, I think a strong friendship or a strong bond, even if it's like a because of what they've been through together, have this like the trauma bonding kind of thing. I think that would be more believable, or more kind of, I get on board a little bit quicker than a romance. I don't think we always necessarily need a romance. It can be a platonic kind of mutual admiration for each other without it being a romance. But
Right. I don't even I don't mind that they slept together. Like having this like casual sex that, they both needed after this like really intense experience. Like that feels very human to me, and like I'm great for sex positivity, but like it's then the emotional hangups that Ganos has after the fact that are just hard for me to, like, I get he feels like he got her killed, which, so, I can understand that part of it, but it's then the romantic entanglement that is,
I
like,
think
I'm
I
with you,
kind of
Steve.
get it a little bit more when someone had pointed out that he's like 20. And I'm like, okay, so he's a young guy, But the problem for me is then that, well, she's 200. And so it's like, I can't believe she would be that connected, which I mean, to be fair, we're not really seeing because she's arguably not really Tattersale anymore. So I don't know. Like, I can kind of buy a young guy getting swept up by it all. But also, like you, Carl, I just don't have the attachment to it. I'm like, eh.
But he's not really hung up, though. So here's the thing. Like, he has notions of regret, but I don't see him like pining or wishing she was back. She died, and they had shared something, and of course he's unhappy about that. And now that he's back, he can't figure out how to talk to her, but he's rejecting the idea of going back to where they were before because she's a child. And
Yeah.
and that is only seeming to come from the suggestion that Whiskey Jack gives him that this might be something you're interested in. And he's like, heck no. So I'm not really seeing the hang up or the pining or anything that would make this weird. Like, it is just as casual, or like it lasted, I think, exactly the right amount of time. It's not like they're thinking that they're long lost lovers, that they need to get back together. They can't even figure out how to talk to each other right this moment. And Silver Fox is not even bringing that up. She's just talking to him like a friend.
Yeah.
And Paran is just figuring out how to deal with the fact that she's growing up. And yeah, I think I'm not seeing a hang up here.
I mean, not with
What
Silver Fox, but I feel like Ganos thinks about her a lot. And it's not just him. Everyone, the way they talk to him about, like, Tattersale, by all rights, by our understanding of the length and time and scope of these relationships, her resurrection should be a much bigger deal to Whiskey Jack and Dujik One Arm than it is to Ganos' parent, because she has fought with them for decades. And
But
yet
they think,
Ganos is the one they're all concerned about. And Ganos
right,
is the one they're all like, oh, this guy, like, watch out for him. Like, Ganos, I'm not sure how you're going to react to this. Like, it to me, he is very much center stage in terms of the tragedy of her coming back, not the same.
but that's because Paran has been having these weird dreams, and Whiskey Jack or someone concludes that it's because of Tattersale, and he's mourning her. And he's like, hey, look, I'll give him information that might help. Like, that's them reacting to how he's behaving at the moment, not what they I think they conclude that the relationship was more serious than they thought, and so they're trying to help him, but not realizing that his problems are coming from elsewhere.
I think there's some truth to that. I mean, I agree he's not telling them the depth of his problems. But he does think about her, and he, like, aches and yearns with her. I mean, he explicitly thinks about, like, being disgusted with himself for still, like, kind of yearning to have a physical relationship, this attraction to Tattersale, even though she's now embodied in a child, and that there's revulsion there because the child is not who he's attracted to. He's attracted to the woman he knew, who is somewhere inside the child.
Yeah, but I feel like that's just something you might think about if you find out that one of your ex-lovers has come back, not necessarily someone you're pining over. Like, it's just a strange conversation to have.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. But I don't know. I just feel like he does. He does yearn, and I think about her as he's standing around, which he does a lot of in these chapters. He just stands around and broods a lot. Like, it's actually kind of hilarious if you take a step back and think about how often Paran is just standing there and thinking, and we're just with him as he's thinking his thoughts alone.
The man's having a hole drilled through his stuff.
Yeah. Very relatable.
Actually, he should be bent over, not just standing.
Shannon, I'm sorry. I definitely interrupted you earlier. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to kind of go off what you were saying earlier. And what the thing I really liked in this with Tattersail or with Silver Fox is that our protagonists, they're all talking about, oh, she's got Tattersail, she's got Nightchill in her, and we love Tattersail. She was great and honorable, and Nightchill we don't know so much about, and she's kind of spooky, and we want her to lean towards Tattersail. But they're all kind of, I'm not sure the answer is either or. Like I think the answer to Silver Fox is and. Like she's both of them. Like it's not strictly just Tattersail reborn. It's Tattersail's soul has been reborn in this person who's now both. And so she's her own unique creation.
Absolutely. I think that is absolutely, if these people were, I mean, I don't know. I think they have an understandable fear that this creepy elder goddess could take over, especially being so powerful, and could just dominate the personality, and who knows what that makes her. But like, I think that's an understandable concern, but I also think that it is a little bit wild, or I don't know if wild's the right term, but like no one is considering that maybe she's just going to be something else that is a combination of these, right? And it definitely speaks to, I haven't read this chapter in the Fallen Ascent big essay book about how you can read about the Carl Jung's like process of integration into the Malazan book, The Fallen, but it definitely, this character relates to kind of the Jungian concept of the shadow, and where everyone has their shadow self, which is this like the unconscious and inside them. The it's not even always the bad things, but just the things they don't want to face. And so it very much feels like to me that the shadow self is just as real as the conscious self, right? And likewise, Tattersail, who I kind of view as kind of the light force as it's being presented to us, right? This more conscious on the surface force is then has the night chill, right? I mean, literally night, darkness, right? Shadow, who's kind of the embodied shadow self within Silver Fox. And I think, and what I'm getting at is through integration, the Jungian idea of integration is, it's literally called integration because you're supposed to integrate your shadow self. You accept the things you don't want to accept about yourself, and you find inner peace and a greater wholeness through that, right? It's like yin and yang when the two halves come together and accept one another. And likewise, I think that is like would be the, who knows what'll happen, I'm not going to say, right? But I think that would be the healthiest thing, right? Is to have this balanced personality within Silver Fox.
And we haven't had a Silver Fox POV yet, so we don't know what kind of pattern is going on within her among all these personalities. We've only had external information, I think. And how closely do you think she relates to some of the other characters we've seen who've had their memories sort of given to them from other sources, like Felison and Absalar? I can't think of any others, but I'm sure I'm missing some. But she's
I was just gonna say, it's very interesting that within these first three books, Erikson has repeated a theme here of young women, girls with multiple warring spirits, personalities inside them. Like, this is the third time. And I'm sure there's some masculine equivalent somewhere. But it's definitely notable that this is, like, for whatever reason, is something that Erikson, like, it's an idea he really gravitates towards. I wonder if he was doing it consciously. I kind of get the feeling, the fact that it repeats so frequently in so few books, that it wasn't, and it just kind of appeared. And the interesting thing about it, I mean, maybe it's part of what he calls his elliptical writing, right? Where he likes to return to the same ideas through different, a slightly different lens. And that's definitely what it does. And so it works for me because all three individual characters do feel like they have ultimately different conflicts and different storylines ultimately to play out. But I do think it is notable that like they are consistently girls, not even like adult women, but girls.
That's a great point. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there are any male equivalents. Crocus comes to mind, but if not explicitly, there's at least the coming of age aspect of his
Right.
story. But
It's just not like he doesn't have an elder god inside him,
Hmm.
or any god inside him. Like that's really kind of the key feature here is none of. I feel like we're probably forgetting something really obvious. But
see, yeah, I didn't get this the first time, but like Nigel is pretty old, much like whoever's possessing. We don't know yet about the goddess who's possessing Felicid, and
right, no, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's like we were introduced to this concept in book 1 through Sorry, and then he's like, all right, now I'm going to do it in this different way in book 2, and then
Mhm.
this different way in book 3. It's interesting, and again that it keeps coming up with these adolescent girls. I mean, Silver Fox isn't even an adolescent at this
Yeah.
point, but
Yeah.
she will be before long, right?
Mhm.
With the rate at which she's aging.
and the Maib will disappear. I don't know how to say it. That's so hard to say. But notably though, this was set up in Gardens of the Moon. It's not something he just did in this
Oh
book,
no,
right?
yeah,
They talk in that scene where where her soul is transplanted, so to speak, about how it carries two souls. And at the time, I don't think we fully knew what they were talking about. That the child will be interesting because of the fact that there will be two souls within her. And I think the fact that she was put together inside the Telanimas warren made her a bone caster too. Which also they mention, I think, in Gardens of the Moon. The bone
yes,
caster bit.
yeah, they
Yeah.
do. It's cool. I mean, look how much there is to talk about, right? That like, this wasn't our number one, any of our number ones,
Yeah.
but we've spent half an hour
Yes.
discussing Silver Fox and a little bit of the Maib.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I just want to say is I think one of Erikson's great writing accomplishments. I just love her character. I think it's just fabulous. And we'll see how her story develops.
Yeah. And she's a testament too of how experience ages you just as much as age, right? Because she's in her 20s and I have to keep reminding myself that she is that young because her thoughts are not those of a young person. They are someone who's been through a lot, who's very much, speaking of women warring with things inside their
Yeah.
minds, she's struggling with her love for her daughter, with the fact that she has to give so much of herself up in order to let her daughter grow well.
Any
But
other thoughts? Or
sorry,
please,
go ahead.
no.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, any other thoughts on her, or do we want to move on to the next little bit?
Yeah,
Which I think
I
is
think
just
we can move on. Yeah, there's going to be more to talk about them anyway because Kalor's immediate reaction to Silver Fox, I think that was interesting. Which again, I didn't get my first time around because
Yeah.
I did not make the Nigel Sister of Cold Knight's connection. So he's angry that she's one of the cursed people, but they seem to have some history beyond just that curse, right? Because it can't be just that made him so sure that she's bad for everything, not just for him. I don't think what I missed the first time around, which I think I'm seeing now, is that he's not wanting to hurt her out of personal interest. He seems to genuinely think that she will cause harm, and I don't think I know yet why he believes that.
Well, and I wanted to ask, do we believe that? Or do we think that this is personal because he knows that Nightchill's part of this concoction? Because I wasn't sure. Like, I was kind of thinking this was entirely personal. And he'll say whatever he wants to say to kill her.
I mean, I think that makes sense. He seems to be exactly that kind of vindictive person because he blew up his continent rather than give in to whatever they were about to come do to him. I figured out my issue though with why I wasn't so willing to just say that he was clearly in the wrong, because there's this Indian mythology is filled with stories about these sages or like people who decide to do penance for some boon from a god, right? And then the king of gods, Indra, always decides at some point that this person, if he gets the boon that he wants, he will grow more powerful than me. He gets all jealous and then sends down some apsaras, like some ladies, to distract them. And so,
Classic.
yeah. So it's like, distract them from their penance so that they won't get their boon. So the fact that it was 3 gods and several mages, all powerful people who wanted to dethrone Kalor, is giving me pause. Like, I don't know how he ran the kingdom, but it, and I believe them that he treated them poorly and whatnot, but I do wonder if there isn't a case of he's going to get too powerful for us to deal with, and he'll get more powerful than us, so we need to destroy him. If there isn't at least a little bit of that element in it, that's why I was skeptical about just taking that situation at face value.
I'm sorry. Am I getting the sense that Varsha is a Kalor apologist?
A little bit,
Excuse
I
me.
think so. I think
Breaking
so.
news.
That's what it sounds like to me.
I think so. Well, I've been the Lysair apologist in the other series, so I'll do the Kalor apologism.
All right.
I think it's
Kalor was not a
interesting.
tyrant, according to Varsha.
I think that you may be onto something to some degree. I mean, I struggle to not think he sucks just on the blunt fact that he was a tyrant, and that seems like pretty explicit. I mean, unless we're supposed to believe that it's the elder gods who wrote that story, but I don't think so. And then on top of that, I mean, and someone who like conquers a whole continent is like, that's not a nice person, right?
Yeah.
like they're not the most heroic character. On top of that, he's just an asshole. Like, he's just
That's true.
nasty. That said, I love him. I think he's great. He's a great character. I love whenever he's on the page because he's always going to be spouting some hatred, and I'm here for a little bit of hatred. And yeah, no, I have.
And it's
Are we?
sassy hatred at the
Is it? So I know there's a big theory about Kalor and his past, and I can't remember if this is something that's confirmed later on, or if this is just something that certain readers have interpreted from the text. Shannon, do you know what I'm talking about? The big Kalor theory?
I mean, no, I don't know about a book Kalor theory. I have read more Kalor in some of the Eslamon books, but I can't think of what you're talking about
It
exactly.
is to be as keep things vague. Is there ever any sort of reveal that he did not do things he's accused of doing?
I don't think so. I don't remember, but I don't think so.
Okay. So in that case, then I think this is just a theory. I don't think this is explicit. Yeah. So where does the crippled god fall? On the continent Kalor
on
rules.
Jakaruku.
No, I thought it was somewhere else because Kalor destroyed his own continent, right?
No.
The same continent?
No, he was falling on Jakaruku. Pieces of him fell all over the place.
And explicitly,
but that was where they were calling him down.
Right.
Because that was the mages where they were.
The mages summoned the crippled god to wield the crippled god's power to fight Kalor. So it was essentially this revolutionary group ripped down the crippled god, causing magical nuclear apocalypse upon the continent. And the theory I've seen put forth is that Kalor did not actually wipe out his empire. He was just the only survivor of what happened when the crippled god fell. And he was so devastated by it that he said, yeah, fuck it. I'm responsible for all this. You're going to blame me anyway, right? Like, fuck you, and he's basically in shock. And he's lashing out in the prologue of Memories of Ice. And that he maybe still sucks, but didn't commit genocide. Although he obviously claims he did. He owns it. And so I think it's an interesting question, right? Because we do know that what it looks like, it's like a nuclear wasteland. Was that something Kalor's even capable of? Doesn't seem like it. But we do know that something that can and did cause that is the fall of the crippled god. And it's like, again, it's so explicitly a nuclear wasteland in that like you get like Chernobyl imagery, right? That this thing becomes the Imperial Warren where there's ash falling from the sky everywhere. And I'm like, can Kalor really nuke a whole continent? I don't think so. I think it's the crippled god. I mean, not intentionally, but his fall is what did it. And Kalor then was just like, it just makes too much sense to me to not believe that that's the case. And I don't think there's been a big reveal about that one way or another. I think this is just a theory, but I think it's a really strong theory and makes a lot of sense, especially given just knowing that, like, he was the top dog, like he was still a tyrant, and so imagine someone like that watches everything they built fall apart in one day, and they know they're going to be blamed for it. In fact, they are. The Elder Gods immediately assume Kalor did it. And so, yeah, he's like, yeah, screw you. Look at me. Look at what I can do. This is what I do to people who try to take things away from me. And then that fundamentally, that tragedy ends up defining his entire existence because he's cursed to relive that over and over again. That everything, because that's important to remember, right? Is his curse isn't just that he's going to live forever. It's that he's going to live forever and all of his plans will fall apart. He will never know success.
But didn't the Elder Gods know about how the cripple god was brought down and where they fell?
Roughly, yeah. I mean, I again, as Shannon mentioned, the pieces fell all over the place. So
So maybe they weren't clear on the particulars. But yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I will say one thing you said, Carl, was that you kind of like him, and I will say, I do actually kind of like Kalor. He is an asshole. He's awful, but I don't know. There's something about him. I kind of like him. I definitely like him a lot more than Malak Rel, who is inarguably less awful than Kalor.
Yeah.
But I still, I just still hate Malak Rel even more.
I don't know that Malak Rel is less awful than Kalor. I mean, I guess it depends. We don't know. Well, Kalor did.
It's more personal to us because we read a book and how he hurt people that we knew, versus this guy who did, I think, allegedly did much more worse things to people that we have thousands of years ago we don't know anything about.
And it's off screen, right? So it is easy to kind of brush that aside. I just want to return to what you were saying, Varsha, though, because I think that's a really interesting reading of it. And if you even want to go so far as to call it a theory, that the Elder Gods, like a big reason, maybe their primary motivating factor here for them deciding to deal with Kalor once and for all is because they didn't want him to ascend, because he was on the edge of ascension.
Yeah, that he could get more powerful than all of them, and they are worried about him taking over. I mean that is a possibility. Like I was explaining the reason I went there before that, because Indra just keeps an army of Apsaras to keep sending down to people who want boons from the Trinity. Anyway, my point is, I think there's incomplete information in this, and some. But and you know what? I would have sworn that the continents were different, where the cripple god came down, and where they went to curse Kalor. But I guess not. It was Jakuruku where that Kalor ruled, right?
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where, like, we're told the crippled god got summoned down onto this continent and nuked the continent, and then in a different POV, we're told Kalor wiped out everyone on the continent.
Hmm.
And so it's one of those, like, we have clashing stories about it, and it's easy to kind of get
Yeah.
mixed up about that, because I also did not understand that until this read. And I only understood it also knowing the theory, which I had read, I believe, on Reddit.
because there's also the comparison, they say, where the pain from this continent, it felt like physical pain and it felt worse than whatever happened to, I forget if they were talking about what the cripple god was experiencing or about the aftermath of the fall of the cripple god on the planets, or like on the continents where he fell. Let me see if I can find that line. But
Well, while you're doing that, I also just want to highlight, if the elder gods do in some way act to harm people that they consider a threat, because mortals, humans who are becoming too powerful, that gives you another idea of not only potentially threats, forces coming up against Shadow Throne and Cotillion, potentially off screen, but things they're possibly dealing with. But also now, and we need to talk about this, I don't know if this is a good transition or not, but Genos is the master of the deck. He is unaligned, and yet he's supposed to be the top dog, pun intended. And damn it, Harsha, you're muted. So now this sounds like my joke bombed.
I'm sorry, that was hilarious. His joke did not bomb. Oh.
Thank you. I
Say it
needed the
again, and I'll
validation.
try to laugh as hard.
So it does make you wonder, right? Like, okay, is there any of these, divine forces, like, probably not going to be, a lot of them aren't going to be very happy that suddenly there's a master of the deck.
Yeah, and it's unclear. Yeah, I guess he is the top dog. Thanks, Carl. And but it's unclear what his role is, right? And just what power he can wield. He is, if the deck is structure on power, then he is sort of a second level in the hierarchy where he is imposing structure on the deck itself, right? Am I making that up, or does Silver Fox say that?
No, I think you're right.
And so, yeah, does he have power over individual aspects of the deck, or does he only have control over who goes where? But their power stays, and he doesn't have any control over that.
That's a good question. I think it. Well, I think the way he affects the level of their power is by where they fit into the deck.
Yeah, makes sense.
I feel pretty confident about that one, for reasons that will become clear.
Yes. Right. So what were you going to discuss about this? About
just that this is maybe a good transition to Genos.
Yeah,
properly, and the master of the deck stuff and all, and the holds and houses, because I mean it's all tied together here.
Yeah, we're gonna need time to talk about that, so let's go there.
So Steve, you want to start us off?
Yeah, before we get onto the deck stuff, just want to say I was glad to see Crone again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot that was in that chapter.
Their origin.
Yes.
Yeah, and
we learned where these crows came from.
Crone isn't not too happy.
I didn't realize we learned that so early in the series. Like I thought that was like an end series thing. But they're made up of pieces or blood of the crippled god. Parts of him, I don't know.
Maggots, specifically
yeah.
maggots that feasted on pieces of the crippled god. Insanity.
Did you guys figure that out from the prologue? Because I needed to be told explicitly in this chapter. I mean, I knew the second time around from the prologue what was going on, but yeah, that was really cool imagery and lots of clues there for anyone who was looking.
Super cool. And Crone is awesome. More Crone is always welcomed.
Yes, always. Crone is funny and I enjoy.
So, Steve, do you want to start us off with the houses and the holds and the deck of the dragons and your thoughts and questions?
Yeah. So, okay. So the something I'm curious about. If the table was okay, because they take the table back. So is it known that the table is connected? Because it seems like the table is connected to the deck. They find the image on the underside of the table, and I got kind of lost because they talk about the deck being inside the table somehow, or
Somehow the table is a deck. I don't know
Okay.
how that
Yeah.
works, but they talked about it as it was a deck. And who was it? Was it created by Quickben?
Yes.
I don't. Okay, it was created by Quickben, and then the Mott irregulars that we learned about in the last chapter, they had stolen it, and it became Kaladin Brood's map table or something, and so now they steal it back. And yeah, but Quickben had created it. Somehow this thing is a deck, even though it's a table. And then the new card on the bottom, that's new. Quickben's like, I didn't make that. So that's something new popping up on it.
So the table creates cards too, I guess.
Well,
as they're created.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not
Somehow it's
that,
that connected to the deck.
yeah, it's not the table itself is creating the cards. It's that new cards are appearing on the table because the table's a deck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they do talk about a little bit about how it seems like so it's also somehow connected to Warrens too, right? Because they talk
Yep.
about different rooms in the house, or was it rooms or was it houses that were doorways?
Well,
to
they
other
start talking
places?
about how some of the houses that are in the deck may actually be the houses that we've seen. The like dead house is like the house of the dead, is the high house death. And then was it Tremolor? Is that life? I think they
Yes.
said that's whatever language that is for life, and so that's
Trellish.
the Trellish house or the Azath house for that particular deck. So we're kind of learning that our panthalons are absolutely are connected to these Azath houses, which in turn are connected to the deck of dragons. Like they're the different houses.
The way
Somehow it's all connected.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are definitely blank spots and like mystery and blah blah blah, but I think the best way to try to wrap your head around it is that these powers naturally exist: darkness, light, shadow, life, death. The Azath houses, and with them the deck of the dragons, are ways of ordering these powers, essentially making them more manageable, more understandable. It's like, in a way, the Azath houses, despite how mysterious they are, and the deck of the dragons are a way of like making a hard magic system out of a fundamentally soft magic, free-flowing thing.
Yeah.
To use our kind of metafictional parlance here.
Because we've talked about.
Yeah.
Like when you ascend, you get this godly power, but then you can just do whatever the heck you want, unless there's some kind of structure forced upon you, and now you can't. Now you're kind of limited to whatever is struck. So yeah, like it's forcing structure on this chaos.
Exactly.
Which then they get into with the unaligned, is that even allows a little bit of chaos. I don't know why. I can't remember what it said.
Because fuck it.
Yeah.
Because you can impose power, impose structure, but yeah, so I guess entropy. I don't know. What about the part where maybe let's finish talking about this. I want to talk about the warren of darkness inside Dragnipur. That was crazy.
Well,
I
and I did have one big question though, because they did talking about the houses and everything. They mentioned how thinnest means ice,
yes,
Yeah.
and so they make you think that okay, so maybe this is the house of like
the
the
jagged.
ice, you know, of what is it, the Warren of the Jaghut, but it, that's an Elder Warren, and it's not really gods, and there is no house of ice or anything. So I was confused by that. That was one thing I was like, what is that talking about? And it's new. Like this house was literally just created 2-3 months ago, their time.
So where it gets really confusing, right, is the Azath houses are not actually the Warrens themselves, but they have
Mm-mm.
gates to the Warrens, right? So the Fenest house is the house of ice. It's tied to that elemental ice, but it isn't like Omtos Falak. Although presumably you could access Omtos Falak, the Elder Warren of Ice,
Yeah.
from
Well,
inside the
all the
Fenest
Warrens.
house.
So I think you're
Right,
supposed to have,
yes.
but yeah,
They do explicitly say that, yeah, from every Azath house, you should be able to access every Warren, which we saw actually at the end of the last book, if you remember, that there was that map and you could like pop off wherever you wanted to,
Mhm.
you know, by walking through a hole through a Warren.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was confused by that because as far as, and then, yeah, I'm looking at the thing here. I mean, the only high houses are life, death, light, dark, shadow, and then the rest are on a line. So I was kind of like, ice isn't actually a house. So I don't know. Like that's the only one that kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop
That's
as far
true.
as this
Yeah,
order that they're trying to do.
that's a fair point. Yeah.
But yeah, but obviously it is connected to Omtos Falak somehow because it's ice.
Yeah, I think so. My first time reading this, I did not understand the Azath houses at all. I think that's totally normal. I mean, there
No,
are
I didn't either.
intentionally there's a lot of ambiguity, but I think in the simplest form, it's just the Azath houses are their own. We don't know, like they're like an alien force that exists to create order over the natural elements
Yeah.
and the ascendants that use those elements. So it's forcing order upon chaos, essentially, forcing order upon the chaos of this magic. And likewise with the deck of the dragons, which does the same thing, but for fortune telling effectively. And kind of, well, that's one of its uses. It's also to just create a structure for these houses.
Yeah. One thing I did really like too was how they took the time to kind of point out how shadow it could, because it is connected to this more primal thing. It's not as ordered as some of the newer ones. You know, there's no champion. What is it? Soldier, weaver, mason, that kind of stuff. It's the hounds. The hounds are actually part of that hierarchy of the shadow because it's just so much more primal. I thought that was kind of cool. I'd remembered seeing that in the back of the books before, and I just didn't connect it. Like, oh, that's why they don't have a mason of House Shadow, because it's not set up like that.
Did we got the reading here, right? In these pages? No?
That's the next chapter.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I won't go there.
Yeah.
Okay. What
Got a
was
failed attempt at a reading / game.
Varsha? Let's talk about what you wanted to talk about, because that does relate to this.
Yes. So I thought that was really cool and like went way over my head the first time around. And I think I will understand Told the Hound so much more now that I know this. I had no idea what was going on in Told the Hounds, the conclusion of it. So I have more hope for it this time around because I know some things. The so Warren holes or like rips in gates to warrens need souls to close them. This has been established twice now, once in Deadhouse Gates and once with Mon. And we are told explicitly that the souls inside Dragnipur are helping keep the gate to Kurald Galain closed. I don't see why I didn't understand that the first time around, but I did not. Or maybe it was just too much inward lingo for me to get it. But the rip is so massive that it needs all the souls within Ragnipur to keep it closed. And maybe Rake needs to keep feeding it more souls to keep it close because they're not going anywhere. And now, apparently, Paran has created some kind of vulnerability in it by letting the hounds escape, which they went, presumably, into Kural Galain.
Right.
And we don't know what happened to them.
Nope.
But now he's dreaming houndy dreams, which may or may not be them at the hounds making their way through that realm, which is all immensely cool that all of that setup led to this payoff that I did not even get my first time around.
It does
It's okay.
beg a
I think
question.
Hmm.
Why is the gate to Kurald Galain sealed? Why did Draconis want to seal the gate to Mother Dark's realm, and presumably to Mother Dark? And then, now he's one of the souls chained to the wagon explicitly, right? Keeping it sealed. Why did he do that?
Well, knowing this series, I'm gonna go ahead and I don't know the answer, but I'm just gonna guess and say angry ex-girlfriend who wants her to stay away.
Locked her away. Bad
Locked her away.
breakup.
Like I don't want to deal with her. Yeah, bad. He had a bad breakup with her, and was like, I need to do everything I can to make sure she doesn't get to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
It does add an interesting.
So what would be his original plan then? If we're thinking that his original plan wasn't this wagon, was it literally just Dragnapart was going to kill people and send him straight to this rent? And then he changed it to so that he wouldn't die.
Yeah, I
mean, that's the only
think
thing I can think.
It would have maybe permanently locked their souls away in the gate.
Yeah.
I feel that's the.
So he came up with this kind of midway place because he was like, well, maybe this will give me a chance to escape or something. Figure something out. But Varsha, I was going to say, don't feel bad. I think the reason this series is so rereadable is because, Steve, it's like right here. We're reading it. We're, you and me and Carl, we're rereading it. And it's right there. It's so blatant. He lays stuff out. But then it's like, it's going to be like a million words until this becomes applicable again. And we will long forget it or we would have. The first time we read it, we will have long forgotten this by the time we get to it. And it's like, oh yeah, way back, 4 or 5 books ago, they set up something that now pays off.
That's fair. Yeah, that makes sense. But I like the understanding that I'm gaining now from both what happened later and from what was set up in the first 2 books.
Oh, I totally get why people talk about this series being so rereadable now.
Yeah.
Like now,
yeah.
In fact, even the first book, second book in, I was like, I get it. Like why people keep talking about they enjoy rereading this series because I don't usually reread things. Like usually I read a book, okay, maybe if it's a really great book, 10 years later, well, I mean, I just reread Game of Thrones, like a year or two ago when I was kind of in a slump. I was like, I need a book I know I like. And I reread it and I was like, this is great. But like that's kind of a special case. But this, I'm like, oh yeah, I see why people are so fanatical about rereading like this series. Like because it's just things you see things the second time through that you just didn't see.
You realize how much of the things that felt like Erikson was pulling shit out of his ass was actually like very well planned and actually was like given to you. Like he like explicitly would tell you things and you realize you just forgot about it because there's so much going on, which is normal. Like that's not a fault of the first time reader, like we inevitably, I know Steve has talked about, and I do think that this was also for me, my first time, my biggest struggle, just in terms of there's too many characters to keep track of. So you kind of just have to get attached to who you do and move on, and so there are lots of characters that you just won't remember. And, therefore there will be events, scenes, even whole concepts that you'll just forget. You'll read it, you'll be like, oh, that's cool. And then you won't see a payoff for whoever knows how long. And so you'll forget about it. And then by the time it comes around, you're like, what the hell is he doing here? Like, this is really cool, but I don't understand what's going on, And that definitely, I think, is a normal first-time reader experience in this book series. And for some people, that's a breaking point. But I find it worthwhile. The first-time experience I thought was still so enjoyable. And now this is like, now it's just giving me an added appreciation for what he was doing. That it was like, oh, he's not just bullshitting. Like, it's all right there.
Yeah, well, it's too bad. Shani, you mentioned you're rereading Song of Ice and Fire. It's too bad it'll never be finished. The series will never be finished.
Rip.
Well,
Don't.
and I was gonna say I reread all 5 books
Yeah,
of all that will ever be written.
yeah, it's so sad.
But
that's a
yeah,
whole other thing.
that's sad. But I think all 5 books are great, and I'm glad I reread them.
But I want to just
Agreed.
mention when we do get to Toll of the Hounds, I think I speak for all the first time readers that when we do get to that point, please remind us on the connections, because by the
Yeah.
time we get there, I know I'll forget. So feel free to remind me. when we
Oh,
get to that point.
we'll hit it. That's
Yeah,
my favorite of the books. Even
we'll
on the
have
first time
to.
read, even having forgotten some of this Dragnapur lore, I still loved it. There's such a great, very human, emotional story there. It's not for everyone. There's a lot of we won't get into that. That's getting way ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. It's I think the most divisive book
Yeah.
of all 10. Like you love it or you hate it. I love it. I love it. It's like probably my number 2 book, but I do know some people hate it. So we'll get there when we get there in 2027.
It's not too
Probably.
far off. Sorry, I wanted to go back to the discussion about Draconis and his creation having a sense of finality, because someone else refers to the finality. He mentions it as it having a sense of finality, and it sounded like he was going to rework it, so it doesn't. But then someone here, I forget who, in the 4th chapter, I think, talks about how his creation does have finality now, which is
That's a mistake. I think they're mistaken.
okay.
I know what you're talking about. I think he did do what he said he was going to do, and we know that's the case because Paran freed the hounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's not final. It seems like it's final to most people, to laymen. It's like, oh yeah, you get trapped in the soul-eating sword, you're screwed, and you're going to drag that wagon for eternity. And there have been people dragging shit for hundreds of thousands of years, so that feels a lot like an eternity. But we explicitly have seen it in Gardens of the Moon that it isn't inherently forever. That once you're chained to it, you can be freed.
Interesting. So do you remember who it was who brought up the finality of it in the 4th chapter? I'm trying to think. Okay, that makes sense. Like that's kind of where I was going to, maybe that this person might be mistaken. But then, yeah, the sense of finality they must be referring to is that they're trapped there forever. But and maybe that's what Paran did, access the the loophole that he left in. Yeah, that makes sense. So, next topic. Are we done with this, or do we have more questions to discuss?
I think, unless anyone has any other questions or comments about all the holds and houses, I think the next kind of maybe good transition is to the War Council, which is just a lot of exposition. And
I know you hated it.
I know I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
Oh, okay.
I just feel like it's a little like for a series. I had mixed feelings about it because the series gets hammered for being needlessly obtuse and obscuring details that don't need to be obscured. And Erikson fights back by that. And he's like, it's just his style, and he trusts the reader to piece things together and all that. And then it's like, well, everyone's wrong here because Erikson flat out gives us all the information in one giant info dump in this chapter.
Yeah.
Now, I think you get away with it because 1, this is book 3 in a series. 2, it's at a war council where they would be discussing these things, so it feels natural. And 3, a lot of the information is new, so it at least has that like relevance. That said, I did feel like it like kind of dragged a little bit, like them just being like, oh yeah, this is this group who does this thing, and this is how they relate to us, and blah blah blah, and it just did that like over and over and over and over again. but it's like right there. Like there's no subtlety. I mean, there's still mysteries around like, oh, what are the Tiniscauri, the like
Yeah.
the everyday grunts of the Panyin
Well,
Domain, but it's go ahead, Shannon.
so we have a parlay where we have now Callan and Brood and his people now teaming up with Dujek and his people that were previously fighting each other, and they're coming together for this greater threat of the Panyin Domain. And yeah, we learn here there's somebody leading it called the Panyin Seer. They have some kind of troops called the Tiniscauri, and the rumors are they're involved in cannibalism. This straight up tells us they're going to make for a city called Kapustan, where they're going to try to hook up with some people called the Grey Swords and see about trying to create kind of a beachhead there to stop the Panyin. Like we pretty much get a lot of the plot for the rest of the book like right here, spelled out in this thing. Like this is what we're going to be doing. And it's not going to all go according to plan, and there's still things to be revealed, but this is a war cancel, and this is their plan to go fight the Panyin.
Yeah. I actually feel like I don't have a lot to comment, partially just out of the fact that I'm not a first-time reader, so like I know what to expect, but it's just very straightforward.
After this parlay, we meet, and I think this was going into when they steal the table. We meet Spindle. We meet a couple more bridge burners that we hadn't really met before. There's Ansi, Sergeant Ansi. There's Spindle, which I guess he's going to be our new mage, with Quick Ben a little more promoted up the ranks. But yeah, he's running around with apparently a shirt made out of his mom's hair. That's a thing. He refuses to wash.
Did have a quick question.
What are you saying, Steve?
I just did have a quick question for the first-time readers or people who are kind of struggling to keep up with all the different kind of factions and things, because I do love when they talk about kind of this tribe that's going around and taking over cities and cannibals, and it kind of builds the kind of tension and anticipation of possibly running into them someday. But how closely should people who are struggling to keep up be paying attention to all these different factions? Is it that important? Should they worry about it, or can they most of the time have a vague understanding and move on?
Oh, I think you should most definitely be worried about the Tiniscauri. I mean, here we get rumors of cannibalism, and then we're not going to talk about the next two chapters till next week, but we learn a little bit more about them in chapter, I think, 6. So they're something to worry about.
The ones you really have to hang on to, you will know because they will make themselves known. I mean, the big thing is that we're told very explicitly, like this is a kind of classic structure here, where we are told, here's the bad guy, now we're going to go fight them. And that is what this book is about. And it's about uncovering what is the Panyin Domain, who is the Panyin Seer, and how can they possibly defeat this force. And that's the key thing. If you realize they're fighting these religious fanatics who are conquering cities left and right, they're led by a seer who is super mysterious and powerful. Those are the key details here. And the Tiniscauri
and I guess
are like the bulk of his force, and they're just like scary cannibals at this point.
And I think as a first-time reader, you maybe don't understand how scary this is. But I mean, just realize these two armies that have been going at it with each other all the way like halfway down this continent have now teamed up against them. So we haven't seen them yet, but clearly they're afraid of them. Like this is a threat.
I think that's the number one thing to take away from that chapter.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to like get them all the first time you see a name. You don't need to try to memorize it or anything. The names will repeat. Like Shannon said, Tiniscauri, you hear about them multiple times. We've heard Panyin Domain several times already, I'm sure. And I think we came across Kapustan in their strategizing. You'll notice the next book is called Kapustan. So you can be sure that anything that's important, we'll revisit enough to be reminded of it.
These things will make themselves known.
Yeah.
You will not be able to forget or miss the things that are crucial. I think that's really important with this series. Like, you have a lot of characters who maybe do kind of important things, but are in some way sort of on the side of the major events or the major thrusts of the story. But like the things you really need to know, like, you know, we keep talking about the tennis gallery, like you will know them when you see them and you will not be able to forget them because they do things that are unforgettable.
Say that again. No. There was something related that I wanted to bring up, but I forgot.
Panyin Domain.
Well, then there was a brief little point then after this where we go back to we meet a guy named Buke and Corbel and how
Yes.
his connection to Corbel Broach and Bacalin.
Mm-hmm.
And how he and I really liked Buke. Like I forgot this guy. So he's a little dude, you know, he's from Darujistan. Apparently he was drunk one night in a gutter and his family died in a house fire. And so he
Horrible.
responded to that by sobering up but now he puts himself in dangerous situations as a caravan guard. Like he's guarding the most dangerous people. And what's his name? What's our main guy with that?
Grunter.
I'm blanking on
Gruntle.
his name right now. Gruntle. And Gruntle's thinking how like this is intentional, that he's trying to seek like a honorable death or something. But yeah, but Buke, you know, he's like, oh yeah, Corporal. Or which one is he thinks is the murderer? But like there was a series of like murders in Darujistan right when these guys were around.
It's
Was it
Emancipor
Bacalin?
Reese. Oh wait, no, is that the slave? I always mix
Yeah.
up the names.
No, that's a slave. It's
Corbel
either Corporal Broach
Broach.
or Bacalin.
Corbel Broach. Thank you.
Was it
Corbel
Corbel?
Broach is.
So yeah, so there was, which I thought was cool. It was like we got like serial killer fantasy story here, where we got, you know, it's like apparently they were in Darujistan, a bunch of murders, and Buke's like, oh, it was this guy, like I'm sure of it, and so now he signed up to be their guard because he's kind of like following them. So I thought that was neat. Like even though it seems disconnected from everything else going on, I was like, I don't know, I was like, this is like really cool.
What a
Like this little guy Buke.
Erikson just has an endless repository of cool ideas. Like that book, that could be a book in and of itself, right? Is the serial killer and his necromancer buddy, you know, creepy as hell, traveling around, and then they hire on a guard who secretly wants to kill them because he wants to die doing something heroic. He's like seeking retribution and not retribution even, although a bit, but redemption. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Redemption and death. Like that's an amazing story right there. A premise for a story. That's so cool. And this is just like a subplot in this giant war novel. Oh, I love it. How are we feeling about Gruntle and Stani and Harlow and Buke here? And all these characters at this point in the story.
Steve?
Anyone? So I'm really curious about Steve, yeah.
Yeah, because the rest of us have read it. We got to know where this is all going.
Really, I just thought, well, okay, more characters to keep track of.
Fair enough.
I mean, that's kind of
Fair enough. But I like him. I like Gruntle. His, you know, I love Stani, Manakis. Just her, I don't know, just her personality.
Yeah.
She's great.
I love the irreverent dynamic between them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very similar, but just different enough from the Malazan soldiers. and like that conversation between Paran and Whiskey Jack, where Whiskey Jack's like, I think we should get you promoted just so this confusion you seem to be having about who's commanding whom gets cleared up, and you'll have reason to talk to me that way. So yeah, I like the complete sort of. I mean, there is respect where it matters, but in that conversation, there is a certain irreverence which I love. I love that subcurrent, both in the soldiers and in this group.
I have a question for you, Steve. In this subplot with the mercenaries, Gruntle, Stani, Harlow, Buke, and the merchants, including Karuli, who is a sorcerer, and then we have the creepsters, Corbel Broach and Bacalin, and their slave Emancipor Reese. Bachlan being a necromancer, and the more like kind of giving, Lord Dracula, Gothic Lord, evil Lord, necromancer vibes, and Corporal Broach, who looks like a thug and is in truth a serial killer. What do any of those characters stand out to you as ones you're particularly interested in? Have any of them latched on to your brain?
No, not yet. I'm just really trying to keep up with all the different names and interactions. So none of them have really stuck out, and kind of related to what we talked about earlier with the factions that matter will kind of continue to come up, and
Yeah.
will kind of they'll have an emphasis on each one of them. I kind of feel the same way about the characters. Is when a new character is introduced, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to take a note of them, but if they're important, then they'll come back around, and then I'll start paying more attention to them.
Favorite bridge burner?
I guess the easy answer is Whiskey Jack.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Whiskey Jack is valid. Well, we're getting the first hint. Oh, or is that next chapter too?
Which one? Quick ban goes to
We met Corlat. I know that much. She's
Yes.
just kind of distant, but she seems nice for a tea standi. And, she kind of cares about Silver Fox a little bit, and cares even more importantly about the Mibe.
Mhm.
Is it chapter 4 where we get the first hints of a potential romance? No, okay, that's got to be chapter 5. All right, well, I didn't spoil it in detail, but I all but did that, so hopefully that's not a big deal to anyone. Anyway, Steve, I'm curious, what are your, at this point in the book, we're really early on, we're really just at the period of setup, not a lot has happened yet. What are you most interested in? What are you engaged with the most? Who do you like the most? You mentioned Whiskey Jack. What's got you going about this book?
Paran mostly is the one I'm most interested in, and to see how he evolves. And I think he's trying to kind of gain respect from the group and trying to kind of fit in when he came from royalty, and also what he's been through with Hood, and what is in end of book 1.
It's actually like near the start of book 1. Believe it or not, it's crazy.
Feels like a long
It's in the
time
first
ago.
half. Yeah.
But yeah, so all that he's been through, and also knowing that his sisters, he doesn't really know all that happened with Ellison just yet. So I think he's been through a lot, and I think seeing him evolve and kind of see where he goes, he seems like a major character. At least that's what he's been, kind of what I see him as someone who to pay attention to. But that's probably what I'm most interested in, or most kind of taken by, and also, of course, the Deck of Dragons and its relationship with the world and the houses and how it all works. But I think that won't be something we completely understand until much later.
How do you feel about Silver Fox and the Mibe right now?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of, yeah. I think I love all the different mages and like bone casters and necromancers. I love all that stuff. I just wish we'd see more of it, like more of their kind of power.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good transition, as Steve was talking about Gano's fraught, internal psyche and his relationship with his sisters and his family and the tragedy of what he learns about. Varsha, do you want to take the wheel from here?
Yes. I thought those
Adjunct Varsha.
I thought it was a very interesting internal monologue, the conversation between Tujek and Paran, and how Paran sort of struggles to mourn his family. I mean, he is, but then he's also there is a coldness to Tavor, which we are already familiar with, because she thought she was doing something to protect her, but she was able to steel herself enough to send Felison off to an awful fate, which Paran knows. And he also thinks that she will do anything to keep her power, which is interesting. We'll need to sort of think about that and find out if that's true or not, if as we get more acquainted with Tabor later on. But but yeah, like the coldness that apparently he's been trained with, that he's been ingrained with, which we've seen in Paran, which we've seen in Tavor, and which we maybe see a little bit in Paran, where he's not able to shed tears for his family. How easily he seems to be accepting that his parents died and that there's nothing he can do about it now. But maybe it'll come out in other ways.
Yeah, it is interesting that he accepts it very quickly. You're right. Like, it's not that it doesn't emotionally impact him. Like, it hits him really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that. But I actually also loved that he kind of just like accepted it. He didn't go through the denial stage. He just immediately it was a very soldierly way of handling it. Like, oh, they died. Of course.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile on the inside, he's like desperate to have his mother hold him and thinking about how we're all children at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I could be projecting, but it almost gave the impression of like, okay, I need to deal with this, so I'll get out of here. So I'll say whatever I can to get out of here quickly. And
Absolutely.
meanwhile, Dujek is trying to explain what happened to Felicin, and he's like, if she's dead, just give it to me straight. I don't need to hear the rest of it. But yeah, I thought that was that moment. These are the people that we are most acquainted with over the course of this book, right? Like, they are who individually we've spent the most time with. Him and Felicin, like members of this family. So his reaction to what happened to the sister, I thought was very interesting and heart wrenching.
You know what's a motif we see again?
Mm-hmm.
The armor keeping
Yes,
the
exactly.
vulnerability
Yeah.
in. Same exact
Yeah.
motif with Felicin, right? When she was talking about the armor she wore to hide how scared and weak she was inside. That's her coldness, right? But for Paran, for Ganos, it's the armor of adulthood and soldiery in this case. And I think it's interesting too, because so often when you would see this talk of this armor hiding the inner weakness, the inner fear, the inner grief, it's often attributed in stories to male characters exclusively, and often as a product of their masculinity. Where here it's not that. It's a product of like survival in Felicin's case, and here with Ganos, it's not because he's a man and he's fulfilling some certain gender role in that regard. It's because he's a soldier, and he has to keep that. And he's not just a soldier; he's a captain, so he has to look strong in front of everyone. So he has to, shove it all down. And then he can walk out onto a barrow, which is as literal a symbol as you could get for what he's dealing with. And sometimes the series is not subtle at all. And, just weep. And I don't even think he cries. I think he just no, there's no way he'd cry, because that would go against his entire thing right now, which is he's pushing everything down, right? He's burying all of his emotions deep, and he's tearing through the lining of his stomach as he's doing it. I love this boy.
What you mentioned, Varsha, was one of my favorite quotes related to what you said earlier about it was, "Death and dying make us into children once again."
It's great.
Yeah. That was beautiful. And yes, I noticed the recurrence of the armor imagery too, and it was brilliant how they both mirrored the same thought, but also it was just ever so subtly different, but with the same motivation, which is to hide the bleeding within.
It's interesting that fate has woven such potent roles for all three of the Paran siblings. One is an adjunct, one is the master of the deck, and one is the whirlwind goddess. They're all in many ways kind of in conflict.
Tavir.
Yeah, Tavirin is right. Yeah, exactly. The Parans really are the Tavirin of this. What were you? The Pavirin?
Yeah, that's the family name, right? Paran. Yeah, Ganos. Pavi. Okay. Moving moving on from that bad joke that I made.
I support it. I'm here for a Wheel of Time joke in our Malazan read through.
It was over my head. That's how I was like, what?
You have not read or watched any Wheel of Time?
No
Fair
interest.
enough. There was something else I thought of. Quick Ben and the interaction with that old lady. I thought I misremembered that he explicitly asks someone, why does Burn sleep? Because in the previous chapter we were kind of told that she does and what's going on with her, but then he goes to an old woman, a witch lady, to get more details, and that was the chilling moment I mentioned when he says, he straight up asks, why does the goddess sleep? Did anyone, was it just me or did anyone else get chills from that?
Oh, I did. I forgot about all of this stuff and I love it because Burn is one of those big mysteries for me. I forgot the scene of like earlier on with her sons, her creations, who are dying to the crippled gods' poison, and seeing her ribs. They're holding up her ribs like Atlas holds up the sky. It's just powerful imagery, so unique, and also just like a little detail that I feel like, well, I don't know. Here's a question for you. Do you think the calendar is accurate? I don't think Byrne fell asleep 2,000 years ago. If Byrne falling asleep, say like Byrne being awake means the world blows up, like I don't think she just like, I don't know why the calendar starts 1,700 years ago or 1,100 years ago it is. I think that may be a mistake and that something else happened and they decided to say Byrne's asleep, but Byrne's been asleep for a much longer time than that. Just their conversations around it, like it just doesn't make sense to me, because Byrne didn't ascend 1,100 years ago. We get the sense she's been the planet and the goddess of the planet, Mother Earth, if you will, for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah, there was some stuff there that I was wrestling with too, because she what's what? Yeah, if her waking up means that the planet blows up, she was awake before, and the planet didn't blow up. Life sustained on it.
Was she awake though? That's what I'm saying. I'm
Was
not
she
convinced she's
ever
ever
awake?
been
Is the
awake.
question? No.
I think she's just been dormant so long as she's been this goddess. And before then, maybe pre-goddess, she was awake. Because Byrne was a person, presumably, before she was a goddess.
Well, maybe it's the poison of the crippled god that makes him think that would be what would cause her to end the world, because she's, I don't know, driven mad or something or whatever.
That if she wakes up now, she will destroy. But before it
Yeah,
was
maybe this has
sort of
changed her because she had to go to, because it says that she went to sleep because of the poisoning of the crippled god.
Yeah.
So maybe she was showing signs of something, and
Well,
that's why it was like, oh, we got to put her down.
The calendar is definitely wrong then, because if she fell asleep because of the poison, that was 100,000 years ago, and the calendar starts 1,000 years ago.
Oh, but 100,000 years ago is when the poisoning started. I think we talked about this last weekend. One idea we had was that maybe she started feeling poisoned, but she didn't get to a point where, things are going completely haywire until recently.
Yeah. That was what I got out of it. Was that the crippled god fell, he was chained, and then at some point they had to chain her, but it was a long time later. But I don't know.
I agree. Things are definitely getting worse, and it's clearly rapidly getting worse because we now have this ticking clock, right? I don't know. I'm not convinced that Byrne has been awake for a long, long time. Unless the goddess is shifting and it's not actually one goddess, it's like maybe it's one spirit but inhabiting different beings, and like we've had multiple Byrnes. I think Byrne has been asleep for a long time.
That seems fair.
Possible.
Like, because I think, and this goes back to that other thing we keep bringing up, which is how does whoever started the calendar know that she's asleep? I guess there's always the possibility that some mage
Right.
figured it out, but if it's just by detection, then something changed. So it could be that she went to sleep a long time before they decided to start the calendar.
Mhm.
And she
Well, we
sleeps.
do have a series with people that are thousands and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years old. So one of them could have been like, "Oh, she went to sleep,"
Yeah,
Sure.
1,000 years
Yeah.
ago.
that's fair.
Yesterday to you and me.
Yeah. So
What?
But I don't know.
Yeah.
so the answer to the question why does she sleep is that she sleeps to dream, which also I was having difficulty understanding.
Me too.
Oh, there was a lot of esoteric talk in that conversation, which makes you wonder how much of it is meaningful and how much is intentionally obscuratory on the part of the witch
Right.
to
Makes
hide
sense.
the fact that she doesn't know.
She's also an old woman who prefers the cold for some reason, which Quickpen thinks on later, but we don't yet know why that's relevant. But it's interesting. I thought that was strange too. She prefers the cold. But also, there seems to be, I don't remember if this quite plays out in this way, but burnt fever, that sounds a bit like, talking about global warming, that she's developing a fever.
Yeah.
And the heat that is meant to cleanse is achieving the opposite effect. But
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Wait, do you think the implication with the cold, the woman preferring to be cold, is that she's a Jagat in disguise?
That's possible. That seems possible, yeah.
Could be.
But
I'm trying to think if we've
I
ever
don't
seen
know.
a Jagat glamored.
That's true. But I also don't know what the significance of that would be if she was, in fact, a Jagat. Maybe she's some kind of god in disguise.
Yeah, she would be presumably an ascendant at this point. Maybe not, though. And she has to be in disguise because otherwise all the Talani Mass will try to kill her.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. And there's a bone caster in the area too. Cool.
Do we get any talk and tool and no, none of that in these chapters?
No, I don't think so.
No Lady
Unless
Envy?
there was anything in chapter 3 that I don't remember.
All right, no, I don't think so. Okay, we'll hold on it then for chapter 5.
No,
Yeah, I think we've about covered everything of significance in these chapters.
Okay.
Was there anything
Good
else?
work, team. I think we hit really the major things. Are we ready for quotes then?
Yes, let's do quotes.
I'm going to pick one. I will pick one. I will not fail.
Do I have one?
I might fail.
I've been mostly highlighting information stuff, I don't have any, except for the armor one. Armor encumbers, restricts the body and soul within it, but it also protects. Blows are blunted, feelings lose their edge, leaving us to suffer not but a plague of bruises, and after a time bruises fade. Oh, I like this. Okay, yeah, this is kind of the opposite of Felicin, because Paran is protecting himself against external blows, and Felicin's armor is to give blows because she's hiding herself.
So true.
The protective embrace of nobility.
I'm desperate to find a Maibi quote.
No.
For my number one best gal, but I'm struggling.
Probably chapter 3.
Yeah, that's
Something
what I'm looking.
in there.
All my highlights were just kind of information, which
Right?
we
Yeah.
didn't mention. So I think it was a revelation that Ganos's mom committed suicide. I don't think.
Oh, right. Yeah.
they told us that in the last book. They just died one after another. We didn't know that the dad died and then the mom killed herself.
That's a great point. That's actually a really important detail to note there.
Mm-hmm.
And mothers are definitely important in this book. So that's an interesting one to notice.
Oh, right. Yeah, and he doesn't flinch at that too. He's like, yeah, that makes sense. She would do that.
Yeah, without dad, sure.
And crone, what do you guys make of this? That the crone cherishes and loves the Maib.
I love it. I think calls her what does she call her? Hollow pot, something like that. Fragile pot, broken pot, something. Clay pot.
Clay pot.
That is very sweet and also a depressing name for a woman. I'm not gonna lie, very, very depressing. Although I know it is a pet name, but that's bleak.
Yeah. But there was also some person that Silver Fox takes note of who accompanied Dujek to the War Council. Artantos. Do you guys remember who that is?
I do remember, and like he's clearly someone, and I could not tell you for the life of me. I've read this book twice before this. This is my actually third read through. I have no idea who the hell that guy is. So I'm excited to rediscover whatever his deal is.
I remember who that guy is, but I won't say anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited for that reveal because he's like immediately flagged. Literally, he's the standard bearer, and
yeah,
yet he just seems so unimportant. It's crazy.
Among all who possess memories, whether as individual or a people, life's lessons are ever the same lessons. This was Korlat, I think. And also, in all that is to come, think on forgiveness. Hold on to it, but know too that it must not always be freely given.
So good.
Did you find it?
No, this is rough. It's rough. I can find. Oh fuck. Crone, you must have good quotes.
I can pause the recording until you find it. Hold on, let me do that. And we're back.
my long-awaited quote. But there's no escape, is there? Memories and revelations settle in like poisons, never to be expunged. This coming after Paran talking about the armor of adulthood, how it's meant to defend you. But at the end of the day, the memories cannot be expunged. Seems very appropriate given the title of this book. Memory is a major theme, so I like that.
That's right. That is right.
How the memories, the stories of our past inform our today.
I hope the chapters where Memories of Ice has been dropped already. I can't remember where it was though.
It was in the prologue, I think.
It's in the prologue. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, then we're way past it. Cool.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other topics?
I think we're good to go.
Okay.
Ready for chapter 5 and 6 next week.
Yes, we will be chatting about chapters 5 and 6 next week for anyone following along with us. And for the rest of the schedule, please check out the Patreon forum. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.